Bathurst. We're considering private member statements, so I call the member for Newtown.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise today to bring the concerns of many residents, constituents and users of our wonderful urban sanctuaries and open green spaces in our city, as well as those campaigning to prevent the loss of beautiful old trees in our inner city, to the attention of this Parliament. Most recently, some constituents have contacted me expressing their serious concerns about the loss of old trees on Anzac Parade. Judith explained she is one of the constituents engaged in a struggle with the state coalition government to protect the Anzac Parade and Allison Road trees. She lives in Redfern and uses Moore Park every day. Sonia writes, I'm writing to voice my absolute and unqualified objection to the demolition of trees which line Anzac Parade to make way for the light rail. This is not progress. There must be an alternative to demolishing trees that are nearly 150 years old. This is just a clear indication that, just like WestConnex, you are not listening. She's referring to the government here, to the voice of the electorate who object to those overblown projects that will not deliver for the long-term benefits or solutions for transport issues in our city. And John urges, before any more work is undertaken on this project, the Australian and international community need to be fully informed of the full effects of the project on our natural and built environment, to be able to decide if this progress is really what we want or not. Last year, the Total Environment Centre launched a campaign around the need for protecting urban sanctuaries and green space in our inner city areas. It is clear that there are communities standing up, not just across the electorate of Newtown, but throughout the Sydney metropolitan area, saying that they do not want to see a destruction to our urban sanctuaries and green space. The Total Environment Centre released an urban sanctuary charter which says in part that a sustainable city must be planned on the basis of enshrined protection of its natural areas and public spaces, and that Sydney's remnant natural areas and parklands must be protected from urbanisation, overuse, weed infestation, illegal dumping, pollution, poorly planned infrastructure and unregulated development. In an op-ed to the Sydney Morning Herald last year, Jeff Angel from the Total Environment Centre expressed concerns that the project had catalogued more than 20 current assaults on urban bush and parks in Sydney alone. And I'd like to spend the rest of the time here in this Parliament bringing the attention of the House to three issues that are threatening those that live in the electorate of Newtown and the green spaces and urban sanctuaries which we love so much. The first of those is WestConnex. We are seeing acres of our precious Sydney Park that will be lost as a result of WestConnex. This is an outrageous loss, not just to old trees, but also to precious green space. Green space where the City of Sydney has actually invested millions of dollars putting in the most amazing wetland projects and revitalising that area that is the heart of the inner city and the inner west when it comes to parkland. But it is not just the inner city parkland and Sydney Park that is under threat from WestConnex. We are also seeing the outrageous destruction of 75 hectares of vegetation, including the endangered turpentine Ironbark forest and the critically endangered Cooks River-Castlereagh Ironbark forest, as well as the loss of the habitat of the vulnerable green and golden bell frog at the Kogarah Golf Course. What is most outrageous about this loss is actually when the original M5 was built, these areas were deemed so precious that actually protection was put in place to make sure that that protection would be maintained. But yet we are seeing less than 20 years later those now being destructed as a result of the widening of the road. The other area is the threat, and this is the serious threat that people have raised around the loss of trees at Anzac Parade. We know that we need to invest in infrastructure and public transport in our city, but that does not mean that it should be at the cost of old, beautiful trees like the ones we are seeing destroyed on Anzac Parade. There are other solutions, and we need to make sure that the historic 100-year-old Moreton Bay and Jackson Bay figs are not destroyed. We also need to see an immediate inquiry, and I support my colleague in the other place, Dr. Maureen Faruqi, who's called for a Greens inquiry into the CBD and light rail project and the loss of trees on Anzac Parade and Allison Road. The final area where we see under threat in terms of green space and urban sanctuaries is in Moore Park. We saw just a couple of weeks ago the Sports Minister attempting to what could be none other described as a land grab of what is the beautiful Kippax Lake and green space at Moore Park. It's important for this government to realise that green space and open space is not free space that can be land grabbed for development. It is actually a valuable asset at the heart of our city. As Bob Brown said in his first speech to Parliament when he was elected in federal Parliament, the future will either be green or not at all, and the Greens commit to standing with the community to protect our urban sanctuaries and green spaces.
I thank the member for Newtown.